So the first book I want to talk about is a book called Love is the Killer App by Tim Sanders. I don't know if anybody's read Love is the Killer App. Okay. It's short. You will read it very quickly. It is really about this notion that everything we read has a lesson. God, I just heard that somewhere. Everything we read has a lesson, and we need to understand what that lesson is and then share that lesson with other people. This is the book that got me back into reading as an adult, like voraciously reading as an adult. And the first thing it taught me was how to annotate a book. Again, I said this sounds really geeky, but it taught me how to annotate a book. So this is a book I just finished recently, and this is something I learned from Tim Sanders, right? There are interesting things, interesting statements and sentences and concepts in every book. A lot of times we underline those in books, and that's great, but the reality is when you want to go back to that book, you spend a lot of time flipping through it, like, why did I underline that? And I can't really remember this, and I don't really remember that. And so the idea is, write it down on the inside front cover. Give me a page number and paraphrase what it is. You don't have to write out the exact words and phrases. Super simple. It's not something that you couldn't come up with on your own, but most of the time when we're reading, we may be on the train, we may be on an airplane, we may be in the office. We don't really have a pen with us. We read in bed. It's not the kind of place you necessarily keep writing materials. I keep a pen in a book, right? And everybody hates that because it breaks the binding and all that, but this is what I do with it. And so when I want to go back, this happens to be a book that's on this list. When I want to go back to this book and pull out a couple of key phrases or a couple of key thoughts, it's really easy for me to open up the book and understand what I was thinking while I was reading it. It is like my own little personal Cliff's Notes. This side are pages and concepts. This side was me starting to put together, what does this all mean? What does this book mean? How am I going to write a review about this book? What do I think is important? And so that's the first thing that I learned from Love is the Killer App, is how to annotate a book. The next thing I learned from Love is the Killer App is something I already said, which is about sharing. The love that Tim Sanders is talking about here is not romantic love. It is the love of doing something for someone else. And that when you share, when you read and you learn things, you got to share that with other people. That's why it was written in the first place. It was written to share. And so that's the big idea of Love is the Killer App. When you're in a business, this concept of love is about helping others be successful. Your business is all about helping others be successful based on what you're sharing in terms of the market, or based on what you're sharing in terms of your clients in aggregate, or based on what you're sharing in terms of someone's time of their life. And that's why the sharing is so important, and that's what that love is. Now, Tim Sanders happens to call this act, and the people that do it, he calls them love cats, right? So we're here sort of make you all love cats as we go through the rest of the presentation.